we have a unique challenge where in our industry, it's not uncommon for the parent of an account to be different from the account actually using the software. So in customer success, the definition of your customer is the person paying the bills, the person using the software. That's really difficult to do when you have two legal entities, which are one's paying the bill and one's actually using the software, but they're not joint. And quite interesting in that sense where our CRM hasn't been really set up correctly in that way to be able to help us with that. It is taking a bit of blood, sweat, and tears, probably the best way to put it. Probably more tears than anything else. We're working there and we're getting there, and it's taking a lot of time.
Welcome to Customer Unsuccess, the podcast where we cut out the noise and talk with real leaders about their hardest lessons in customer success and other go-to-market motions. I'm your host, Joe DeGrande, and in each episode, we're going to unpack real challenges from real leaders, failed tech implementations, a strategy that didn't yield results, or difficult customers. But more importantly, we're going to take those lessons learned and share them with you so that way you can avoid those same mistakes with your team. So if you're in customer success, sales, or other go-to-market motions, stick around to hear from the best. Now let's dig into it. On this week's episode of Customer Unsuccess, we have Aaron Hatton, previously a digital CS program manager at Gainsight, and now he's building the digital CS program at PVCase from the ground up. And he tells a story of how parent-child account relationships nearly derailed a rollout and how he rallied the teams to clean up the mess. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do too. Now let's dive in. Should we kick this off? Should we do it?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's do it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Aaron, for coming on the show. This is great for Customer Unsuccess. So you and I actually met, I believe, in the digital customer success community.
That's right.
Is that right? Yes.
Yeah.
And we just connected. I think we're looking, and obviously we just got to share ideas in that group. If you haven't joined, I'll throw the link into the description of the podcast. But currently, you're previously at Gainsight. I know you did a lot of work there, and I think even the books behind you mentioned you contribute a little bit to, which is awesome. But you're currently is it PVCase?
PVCase, that's right. Yeah, mixing it up a little bit. Joining it, they're at a scale up stage right now, so helping them establish a digital CS program from the ground up. Very greenfield, right? Like when I joined, they were just getting customer success in.
Right.
So it's like opportunity to build the foundations correctly, which has been an adventure of its own.
Isn't that always nice? Isn't it nice? You just got a fresh set of eyes. You're like, oh, I've gone through hell and back. I know what not to do now. Now I can just be like, listen, just all I got to do is listen. Just let me drive. Let me drive the car.
What I say, when I joined Gainsight, they had a V1 already, right? So It was just like evolving someone else's work. And whoever did it before me did a really great job, right? But there's still those things where you're like, oh man, if we had done this slightly better, it would have been easier. So then this time being completely greenfield, right? Like setting up a CSP.
Right.
That's been the past 6 months of my life. And getting Gainsight, obviously, into the tech stack and then getting everything configured in a way where I'm like thinking 2 steps ahead. I'm like, hey, I know I'm going to need this later on for personalization. I know I'm going to need this later on for like right in time messaging. So having those foundations set correctly it's been a blessing, but it's also been a bit of a curse because I feel as though I'm like my own blocker in some sense because I'm like trying to future-proof things too much, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line. It's a balance, right? Like I think it's so tough because it is a race against time, right? Especially if you're coming new in an organization, right? You want those quick wins, but at the same time, it's like, hey, you don't want to rush it too much because you've seen the pitfalls, and I get it. It's definitely a challenge for sure.
Yeah, and then building it's one thing, but then the next thing is getting your team to adopt it, right? And this is ironic, right? We in customer success are so good at pitching and telling customers, change management, we need to do change champions, we need to do this, we need to do that. And then when it comes to our own internal tools, we don't do anything like that normally, right? We're just like, hey guys, you need to start using this tool. So I try to live by what we sell and what we like. Eat our own dog foods or drink our own champagne, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, we're doing a change champion, like we're doing the whole thing. And we only have a small team. We have like 12, 16
Oh, it's not too
people.
bad. Yeah.
But it was enough for us to be able to deploy it pretty easily because I had heard a story pretty recently where a company had bought like a CRM. They've gone from pen and paper. Before we started recording, we were talking about pen and paper.
Yeah.
They'd gone from a pen and paper business to trying to have a CRM, right? And no one adopted it. because they
Yeah.
just didn't invest the time into that change management piece. And I was
Yep.
like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to have this really nice, super powerful CSP, all the right data in all the right places, but no one uses it day to day. That's that's useless to us as a
Yeah.
business.
100%. Yeah, and I think it's funny with enablement. And I know we're kind of going in. And this is great, and I know we're going to get to the story in a bit, but it's interesting with enablement when it comes to these tools, whether it's a CRM, CSP. It is essentially at least how I view it. I don't know if you agree, but it's essentially customer success internally. It's your internal customer success team because you're trying to get the CSMs, whoever your customer is, right? Like in ops, your customers, your your internal employees, but it's trying to get them to understand the value. So like going back to a pen and paper business, that's a stretch, right? Like it's a
Mhm.
challenge because you're trying to, I mean, especially if they're field reps, right? If they're going out there on the field, I mean, it's a totally
Right.
different ball game. So yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It is, and I often say we're our own worst customer, right?
Yep.
Because
Of
like
course.
whilst we do know the best practices and we do know we need to do these things, we also know we don't need to. We can get circumvent some of these things too, right? So it's it's a problem, and I've seen it time and time again.
Oh, I'm sure. It's like I give this best example because everyone can kind of relate. Is the it's like the social media. I don't know if it's like a thing, but if you see social media strategists or agencies, and they say like, oh, we work with the best of the best CPG brands, etc., and then you look at their own personal page and you're like, well, how come you don't have enough engagement? Right? It's like it's tough to kind of drink your own Kool-Aid, so to speak.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, definitely. And there are some companies which do it really well,
right?
and some companies which don't do it so well. I think if you can set yourself as a good example, you also prove yourself to be the market leader, and then you can write books on it, like the one behind you, with digital
Yep.
customer success, right? You like exemplify, you talk about it, you end up showing and sharing what you're doing and what's working well for you, and it helps you learn your product too. Like, where are your pitfalls? What are the things which you need to change? What are some of the things which you need to adjust?
100% for sure. Well, I guess like on the, keeping with the theme as far as like, hey, the challenges of, right, like doing things right, or just avoiding mistakes going down the line. I know we had a conversation, obviously, like on our call when we met, was about like, we talk a lot about, especially like us both being in digital CS, tech touch, or scalable customer success motions. It's when implementing these tools, data infrastructure is a core piece. And we've spoken to a lot of people on the show about the importance of it and hearing stories. But you bring up a pretty interesting one. I remember we talked about kind of like a parent-child relationship story in CSP or CRM. So I'm curious. I want to hear the story, for the audience, how they could avoid that challenge.
Yeah, we have a unique challenge where in our industry, it's not uncommon for um, the parent of an account to be different from the account actually using the software, right?
Mm,
And so in customer success, the definition of your customer is the person paying the bills, the person using the software.
sure.
Well, that's really difficult to do when you have two legal entities, which are one's paying the bill and one's doing the like actual using the software, but they're
Mm,
not joint in any way. They're not like it's a subsidiary or something like that. Sometimes they're completely separate entities out of two different countries.
mm,
So it's been quite interesting in that sense where our CRM hasn't been really set up correctly in that way to be able to help us with that. Um, we've been working hard to kind of flatten that to try making it so like, okay, well, we know the usage is associated to this account paying the bill. So how do we give an identifier to like link it through, right? So we do a
sure.
lookup of sorts. We're most of the way there. It is taking a bit of blood, sweat, and tears. I
Mm.
think it's probably the best way to put it. Probably more tears than anything else. But yeah, we're working there and we're getting there, and it's taking a lot of time.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, tell me more about the, I guess like the approach, right? So if you're going in that scenario, so this sounds like this is more now you're kind of given this situation, you need to solve it. So now, like, I guess like what was your first step to kind of unwind this? Like that's, I guess, what I'm curious about.
We unwound it by mistake, and this is probably leans really well into the theme of the podcast, right? Like
Right.
our mistake was we deployed the CSP, we had the customer health score logic algorithm, if you will, designed in such a way where we're like, If a customer's not using the licenses they're paying for, then that's a red flag. If they're paying us but they don't have any licenses, that's a red flag. If they, all these different variations around that.
Sure.
And what happened was we were having some of our customers come back as like, this customer's at risk because they're not using the licenses. They're not like, they're paying, but they're not getting anything out of it. And so we started to do some digging. We were like, oh, this is how it's set up. And
Mm.
this was it was kind of a mistake in the sense of like, we didn't involve the right stakeholders from our revenue operations teams. We didn't bring the right people from our sales teams into the conversations as we started this process.
Mm.
And we since went back and was like, hey guys, why is it set up this way? And they're like, oh yeah, we forgot to tell you, it's this, 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 and this. And we're like, ah, great. It would have been great to have known that 6 months ago before we like put all this time and training into this tool.
Mm.
So what we've been trying to do since then is to really establish a good path forwards with those teams, right? Like,
Sure.
how do we set up this cross-functional relationship? So our RevOps team are helping us a bit more with the deployment of a CS focused tool for our CS ops folks. And our sales teams, if they're selling things in a really weird, non-standard way, we kind of need to know that, right? We need to make sure we adapt the systems and have it set up correctly to be able to help with that.
Sure. No, that's good. So it sounds like it's, and this is something I talk about quite a bit. It's a big theme here is cross-functional relationships, bringing in the right people, RevOps, sales. I guess tell me more about that, right? I guess like, for the audience, like how the impact of sales, bring them into the mix, right? Because RevOps, we'll talk about them too, because they're important, right? They're using similar tools. They kind of understand the inner workings. Hopefully they own your data. But let's elaborate more on sales, because that's an interesting one.
Yeah, the biggest problem which most businesses face is that sales to CS handoff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no matter whatever company you join, whatever industry, I've joined lots of companies at different stages, whether they're FTSE 500, they're a startup or scale up. We all have the same problem. The same problem is that salespeople, maybe they're great at taking notes and it's all in the system, or it's in a Google Doc somewhere, or they're terrible at taking notes and you have to meet with them to be able to discover it. So what we were doing was we were trying to figure out these accounts, and we were like, like we just need to go to whoever sold this account. Let's figure out from like the beginning process why it's set up that way, and talking with the sales reps and understanding like how they're selling and why they're selling and how they're inputting it into the system. We were like, oh, that's why it's being done that way. And that really helped give us that little bit of visibility. It also helped quite a lot with starting to establish the relationship to have that other conversation around, okay, well, if you had put the notes into these places, or if you can do that in future, and we make it mandatory for you to close win and op, that would help us to be able to understand this. We can send an automated summary to the CSM or something like that to make it everyone's life easier.
Sure. No, I think it's having that knowledge and understanding prior you could avoid a lot of issues down the road. And then AI is pretty interesting because it's actually taking a lot of the legwork out, right? Like salespeople inherently, they're focused on hitting their goals, right? That's what kind of keeps the lights on, whether it's, obviously for the business as well as CS too, but like in terms of they're heavily compensated most likely as commission. So like their time is very important. And that is a common pushback as far as making sure that handoff is clean and making sure that they're updating the data. But it's definitely changing the game. I've seen some examples with like Gong and other conversation intelligence tools that are wrapping up their notes pretty efficiently and then even making them actionable. So I'm excited to see how that kind of turns and has an impact there.
I can see that being really beneficial. If it's like collecting those medic notes and then pulling them into your CRM, that's going to help massively, right?
Of course.
I haven't quite seen anyone do that successfully yet, and maybe we're behind the curve. Maybe the companies I've worked at are behind the curve, right? But I know AI is pretty new to the B2B world or in the business world, at least for the past year or two. So no one's really actively been using it since the past year. So there's probably someone out there doing it, but I personally haven't seen that yet.
No, it's interesting. I went to a conference this week, sales engagement platform, outreach.io. So a little different as opposed to your like a CSP, of course. But what's interesting is I sat in the training sessions, and which are it was a ton of admins, right? RevOps people.
Right.
And while the tool, listen, great tool, they're pushing AI, which a lot of tools are, and I'm excited for them outreach of what's they got going. But I will say, like a lot of the admins in those conversations, they're focused on governance right now. There's a lot of opportunity to make sure that people. I heard an example of someone, some organization had 90,000 sequences or cadences that they need to clean up. So like, there's tons of. I guess my point is right. Like their challenges are. We're still like. I think there's a lot of FOMO when it comes to AI, but we're still. There's time. There's time. Definitely
Right.
start to embrace it, but it's there's a lot of chatter, and I think it's just more so like, all right, figure out the use cases and the problems first.
We'll
But
get
at
there.
any rate, yeah,
We'll
we'll
get
get
there.
there.
Yeah, I think accuracy is improving day by day. It's not quite there still, but
Yeah,
we'll get there with better accuracy, better learning of the models. Like
yeah,
right now, what we use Claude for one thing, we use Gemini for another, and ChatGPT for another, right?
yeah,
Everyone seems to be doing it until we get this one golden goose. I think it's going to be a mixture of the farm.
yeah. No, it definitely will be a mixture for sure. I've seen a couple people talk about how one's better at content creation than another versus data analysis. Even Clay's coming up quite a bit, where I've been working with teams to figure out like how to leverage it from even a data enrichment on the CS side of things. And they're using their own agent as so their own LLM, but also leveraging kind of doing a waterfall enrichment concept where it's referencing Anthropic, Claude, OpenAI, etc. But yeah, it's definitely we're getting there. But I guess on the back to the story itself, it's we talk about cross-functional relation. Let's talk about RevOps, right? So I guess like in that particular scenario, right? Someone, I mean, arguably like it's someone dropped the ball, right? Not saying if it was RevOps sales or whoever was leading it, but whatever the case is, right? I guess like tell me about their process. Like how can they, right? Like for the audience, if someone from RevOps, customer success ops, like how can they avoid this same mistake outside of like cross-functional relationship, right? I think that's a given, but I'm curious as far as like how they kind of come into the mix in a scenario.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems is how you ask the question,
Mm,
right? You don't know what you don't know. And I was a joiner in the company. It's probably my mistake. I was a joiner in the company. I was like, right, let's get the Salesforce integrated. What do I need to know? And they were like,
mm,
oh, you need to know X, Y, Z. Perfect.
sure.
Right. And there's so many things which like hiccups. I think one of your other guests, I was listening to your podcast the other day, one of the other guests was saying how you should get marketing ops involved of onboarding CSP platforms. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, man, once I heard that, I was like, I wish I heard that 6 months ago because that would have made my life so much easier. Right. Because the reality of it is like when they've integrated Marketo or some other system into the CRM, you're looking at it, you're like, wow, okay, now I know what the hurdles are, what the problems are.
Sure.
And maybe RevOps do know, maybe they don't, right?
Right.
So I think the key thing to do is to try to keep everyone informed of the process, but also ask yourself, like, what could go wrong here?
Mm,
And what technical debt are we creating as a result of like what we're doing, the actions which we're taking? Um, I'm all about future proofing 100%. And if it means putting in a little bit extra work to like change a data field and change things to be a little bit cleaner in the CRM, so then it's easier in the CSP and down the road and the other thing. I think we ended up doing a lot of that, to be honest with you. We tweaked a whole bunch to make it a little bit better, but there were
mm,
still some things which we missed. And no one's perfect. We're going to miss something. Unfortunately, that was the fun thing which we missed.
yeah. You're 100% right. Things will be missed. There is no, I guess, like, what's the saying? I mean, it's perfect is the enemy of progress or good or however it says. Like, you do need to get started at some point, and there is no perfect outcome. But going back to like the RevOps piece, right? I think it is interesting. It's asking the deeper questions, asking what can go wrong. I kind of have a similar philosophy when it comes to like my segmentation for automation, right? I actually kind of do the reverse. I kind of do where it's instead of asking who I want in there, I kind of do the reverse end of it. It's like, who do I not want? Like if this email went out or this in-app, announcement went out, who would really like kill it, whether it's a detractor or someone like totally blow this up if it actually went to them. And that's kind of, I think, is similar way of what you're saying, right? It's like, okay, kind of going in a negative. What can go wrong? Worst case.
But the problem is, it's very easy. to start like including so many stakeholders across the business. You're working
Right.
cross-functionally. You want to be mindful of RevOps. You want to be mindful of sales, marketing, support, legal, everyone. And then what you end up with is this, like, what's the saying is like decision hesitation or something like that, where you don't go anywhere.
Analysis
Analysis
paralysis. Yes.
paralysis. Yeah,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Because you have too many chefs in your kitchen. You
Yep.
have 12 people saying, oh, it needs to be done this way, this way, this way, this way. And there is a little bit of it where you just need to ask for forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
Like you just, okay, you know what? I think I'm just going to do it. I have a good idea. I've got a good principle. I know what I'm doing is the right thing to do. Yeah, it's probably going to upset like legal, hopefully not legal, but it's going to upset one of those departments in some
Sure.
way, nothing major. But it's a risk worth taking because it's going to benefit the business or all these other teams in these ways, right?
Right.
And that's something which you really need to remember in the back of your mind too. It's like, yeah, I want to avoid these problems. And yes, I need to think about like, oh, I should probably ask like finance if this is going to cause a problem with their billing system, or marketing if it's going to cause a problem with their email send system. But there is also a part of it where you're like, okay, I just need to just get something done, and I need to get it done quickly, or like to meet a certain deadline. So let's do it, and let's see what like who shouts, what breaks, and if it needs to roll back, we can do so. But sometimes you just got to go for it.
Yeah. No, 100%. I guess digging into, you brought up some interesting teams, and I want to see if they relate in particularly this story, right? So going back to your segmentation, right, of how you defined a customer at risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this particular scenario, right, you were looking at, I guess, high level, right? Have they actually paid their bill, right? So if they paid for
Right.
the subscription, in addition, users, right? Like, are they actually using the solution, right, and getting value?
Right.
So in that particular case, right, you're looking at totally different departments that we talked about, right? Or arguably, right, depending on how your organization is structured. But we mentioned RevOps and sales, but it sounds like in that particular scenario, at least where the data might be coming from, it's finance or accounting, and then
That's right.
it's product, right? And I think like it it goes to show you, right? It sounds like it's you have to kind of bring all the troops together and kind of have a stakeholder. But I guess like tell me more about like those teams, right? I guess like, from finance and accounting, like how you guys work together on that.
Yeah, it really is trying to be as collaborative as possible. You have to have a pitch deck almost of like, here's what we're trying to do. This
Mm,
is the benefits it's going to bring to the business. Okay, now here's your piece in it, right? And I probably gave that same presentation like 12, 20, maybe even 30 times, right? Because I'm
wow.
just like pitching it to different teams, different stakeholders, different people, different products, everything. And um, that was really helpful to be able to like break the ice so they understand the business value. It's not just like Aaron's going to push this thing, he's being really annoying about it. It's, oh, this is the value add to the business. Is this relatable? This is something which we want to do. Kind of what we teach our customers to do, right, in the CS world.
Sure.
And then, okay, let's like see how I can help contribute towards this, and then give them
Right.
that recognition at the end. So, like with finance, it's making sure that like, okay, where are you putting that data to say they're overdue and by how many days? Is that up to date? How often is that synced? Making sure that's correct and something which we could understand and digest and be able to make sure we set the warnings up correctly. Because if the data is a week old, I don't want to set a warning up for it. But
Right.
if it's not going to be a week old and it's 24 hours, then that's great. I can work to that a little bit differently, right? So just
Mm-hmm.
making sure that everything's set correctly.
Yep.
Um, the team which I get a lot of I don't want to say pushback. I don't think that's the right word. A lot of constructive criticism from is
Mm,
our product teams, right?
okay.
And it's just always been the case for every company I've worked for because they are very protective. The product's their baby. They literally are the ones who are making the product, right?
Yep.
And too often or not, I'm like, hey, I'm ingesting the data of the analytics and how it's being used. And they're like, you are? How are you doing that? Where are you getting this data from? Right? Or you say like, hey, I'm going to send some in-app pop-ups. And they're like, no, you're not. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I need to see these. We need to have a review of these.
Yeah.
So with those scenarios, I try to make sure that we have like identified stakeholders. That could be a product director. That could
Sure.
be a lead systems engineer or developer or whatever it is. But we have someone on that team for each of our product lines who I'm like, okay, you're my go-to guy, right?
Mm,
Or girl. You're the person I'm going to turn to if I have a question on data integrity, quality, whatever, or even just like I'm going to send some in-app pop-ups and I want you to have eyes on to make sure that you can give some criticism if it's a problem. But at
Mm,
the same time, if you don't say anything, I'm just going to go on without it, right?
right.
Like it's you can raise an alarm or you don't say anything else, and your silence is accepted as a yes.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a good piece of feedback. The silence accepted as a yes. It gets things moving, or at least gets you the feedback that you need. At least for me, 9 times out of 10, it worked. But actually, a follow up question now, right? On like the in product app messaging, because this comes up a lot. Even on the other side of it, right? Like there's always a debate on what marketing should be sending versus a CSM, right? Like what
Mhm.
types of touch points, right? If we're sending touch points and speaking in tech touch and digital CS, but like I guess like where does product come in, right? Like how do they fit? Like based on your experience on where obviously they'll want to own certain pieces of it, but I guess like where do you, from your experience, pick as far as working collaboratively with product on one piece of in-app message versus something that's totally owned by CS?
I try to make sure whenever I implement in-app messaging, there is a committee established of
Sure.
sorts, right? And this committee is someone from product marketing
Mm-hmm.
or customer marketing, someone from customer success who's running it. In my role, digital program management, it's typically me, and then someone who is from the product, which is a product director, maybe even the lead designer,
Hmm.
someone who can represent that product line specifically.
Yep.
And any one of them, we can say like, hey, I really need an in-app pop-up to announce this like new feature release. Hey, customers are getting confused about this calculation. We need to give like a tooltip to say like, hey, this is how it actually works.
Hmm.
Or it could be a, hey, I haven't spoken to you in a while. Let's schedule a call as a CSM,
Hmm.
right? And it's anyone can request it. I tried to give them access to build it, but then publishing it has to go through an approval workflow where you publish it to a shared channel in Slack, and if it gives it 48 hours. After 48 hours, if no one says anything, you're good to go. You've got the green light. Let's publish it. Let's get it going, and
Yep.
let's get it tested. But the criteria and the guidelines which we've dictated are you need to be as hyper specific as possible. You got to follow the brand guidelines, obviously,
Sure.
and you got to make sure that you're using the right messaging at the right time, and you're not ignoring the throttling guidelines. You're not bombarding too many people at once, where you're like, this is now going to be a paywall about this little like help tip, like only relevant to you if it's something which you're actively using, right? So let's make sure we show it at the right place at the right time, and not necessarily to everyone who I don't care about that right now. I'm trying to do something else in the system, right?
Sure.
Like, that's a very important thing too.
Yeah. No, I think it's super important. It kind of dials down to having process, right? Like having an actual process internally, and like, and it's kind of falls into governance, right? Like making
Mm-hmm.
sure who has access to what, when certain things kind of come into play versus others, in terms of like different CTAs in this particular example. But that's interesting. I mean, as far as now, yeah, I mean, we talked about the different teams. We've talked about marketing, sales, RevOps, even finance. I mean, like going back to your story, right? As far as like understanding that structure, like the data infrastructure piece, is
Mm-hmm.
there anybody else like that would need to be roped into it, at least in your particular example, to kind of avoid that pitfall?
Well, I don't want to keep name dropping so many departments here, but and legal was the next one.
Yeah,
It's actually really strange because we had to redefine the definition of a customer because the
that's
company had different definitions of a customer from what we were expecting as a customer success team,
yeah,
right?
yep,
Right? A customer success team traditionally, if you think about it, it's the person paying the bills. But if that person
right.
paying the bill isn't the one using the license, who's your customer? Is it the
Mm,
one using the license or is it the one paying the bill? And so legal, we got involved to understand a little bit more about, okay, what contractually are we obliged to? How can we define better in the contracts to say like, you're both our customers and you're going to be considered as one customer, one entity in our systems. That was an interesting conversation, and that also raises concerns. We're a European company, so then we got the concerns around like GDPR, and then if the customer is in the US and in Europe, like what laws do we like prioritize? Do we give them an American contract or do we give them a European contract? So we ended up going for the stricter of the two, right? So trying to make
mm,
sure that we balance that out correctly.
yeah. No, that's the It's super, super interesting. The legal piece, actually, even the definition piece, I've seen this firsthand as well, where how finance or legal defines who a customer is, how sales and like customer success, like it's interesting. I had a particular scenario where it was dumbfounding for a CS team to understand like the concept of a prospect, and how that would be different for them in customer success, right? Like prospect could be viewed as like, hey, potentially a new customer, but they still work in an organization, but they were thinking it from a mindset of like, oh, this is a new business thing. I don't understand what that word means. It's someone that has never heard about, X company before. Totally different. And you could get into a dicey situation if you don't allow your teams on proper definitions, because once you start to implement those systems, everyone's confused. And whether someone needs to go pop into one solution or over another to get a couple of different data points, then you have an enablement issue there again. And then no one knows what to leverage from outreach. It
And it
snowball.
can vary depending on the nature of your product too, right? If
Right.
you're delivering a product which is in turn provides a platform which is delivered a customer experience,
Right.
like that definition changes too, right? Like
Sure.
I had a conversation once with someone. She does digital customer success for like dentist office software, right? So like does
Okay.
the appointments, the scheduling, the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And some really cool anecdotes came out of that conversation, which I'll share in a second.
Yeah.
But she was saying that some of her customers are the dentists and the administrators, the receptionists, but the actual customer is the person attending the office, right? So you're trying to make
Mm,
sure that the customer is the experience is correct for your end customers, and if they like people visiting the dentist aren't using the platform, the dentists aren't going to get value out of the platform, right? So
yep.
you've got to make sure that that end experience is perfect, that your customer is promoting the tool correctly to be able to get their adoption. And then once they get adoption, then they start deriving that ROI.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So that also muddies the water quite a
It's
bit.
no, it definitely does. Yeah, that's actually an interesting dilemma because of the fact that the value, you're kind of using your customer as a way. It's kind of like a two-way street, right? They need to make sure that they enable their own customers to really drive the value in order for them to see the ROI. So you have to kind of enable them. You have to have them be essentially your enablement team or CS
And they're going to
team.
want to be protective too. It's
Right.
like when I was working at a CSP, it's our customer is that CS ops role,
Right.
but the actual customer is the CSMs using the platform every day,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
And if we tell the CSM like, hey, we got this new feature which is amazing, the CS ops are going to be upset because they're like, hang on, we haven't done any enablement on this, we haven't tested it, we don't know this is going to work for our business and our needs.
Right.
So they don't want to do that, right? And that principle applies with the dentist office example. Maybe they don't want the end customers to know, or the patients to know about like this SMS scheduling service
Sure.
or this online calendar booking because they don't want to use that service. So it's trying
Yeah.
to understand how that applies and how it works. Let me share this anecdote before I forget.
Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
They found something interesting. Sending emails to dentists themselves. Most B2B, we send emails what Tuesdays, Thursdays, early morning, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, Friday afternoons at 4 p.m. That's where they get the biggest open rates. And I was
That's
like,
crazy.
tell me about that, right?
Yeah.
And no one wants dentistry work done on a Friday afternoon. So
Makes sense.
what happens? Well, those dentists are sitting there doing admin work for the week they just finished.
Yep.
So as they're doing the admin work, they're in the emails for the first time, maybe in a day, 2 days. And when that email hits the inbox, they're like, oh, great, let's have a look at this.
Yeah.
And so understanding your market and understanding like your audience and who you're sending these communications to really helps you benefit the right time to be able to send these communications.
Absolutely.
It goes against everything which we know, right? But like the reality of it is that what works perfectly. It's like restaurants. If you
Yeah.
want to target the office manager or restaurant manager, sometimes it needs to be at 6 p.m. at night,
Right.
right? They're not going to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning. Maybe they will for breakfast service, but it depends on the type of business. If it's a cocktail bar, probably not so much, right?
Right.
So it's making sure you target at the right time.
Yeah. That's super, super interesting and fascinating because you really and it also kind of stems from too, right? You could segment as much as you want, but you need to know what to segment. You need to know what you kind of have to do that, that upfront work to analyze who your customer is, how they also behave, and then you could kind of go from there. But that's amazing. That's pretty cool though, that you could kind of narrow it down to that in order to improve the engagement based on time.
And it's another lesson, right? It's we need to try these things to be able to
Yeah,
understand it. And sometimes we just don't know these things and we have to do a little bit of trial. And maybe someone accidentally sent an email at 4 p.m. on a Friday because they were like rushing something and it got massive open rates. And they're like, oh, okay,
sure.
this is the time to send it, right? It's like everyone says, don't send an email inviting people to a webinar from a system email address. Always use a human, right?
Right.
Well, the reality of it is, as long as the content's good and it's going to be valuable to the end user, I don't care if it comes from a system or it comes from a person,
Right.
right? And we did that recently, actually. We were like, we're not sure who to send it from. And I was like, you know what? Let's just send it from the education team. We had an
Sure.
840% increase in webinar registrations
There
compared
you
to
go.
usual.
Yeah.
Why? Because we did the personalized messaging in the subject. The topic was focused on what they've been using in the product in the past few weeks. And
Sure.
so, like, it was very targeted to the right and time messaging. And they were like, oh, I don't care who it comes from. It's perfect timing for me and what I need. And it's the
Yeah.
information which is going to be useful to me. So we have to be willing to fail and kind of fail forwards, right? And understand, like, okay, lesson learned. Let's give this a go. And sometimes you're going to, like, it's going to be terrible. You're going to get a 1% open rate. And other times you're going to get an 80% open rate. It's just about finding that sweet spot.
It's finding that sweet spot, but it's more importantly, it's you have to be willing to fail. If you're not willing to fail, you're not willing to try things, try new things, you're not going to know what's going to work, right? I mean, from the webinar registration increase, right, figuring out who the sender is to sending emails to a dentist and figure out what's that right ideal time frame, you would never know unless you experiment, do some A/B testing. So
Yeah.
good
And sometimes
stuff.
your accidents are blessings in disguise,
Oh,
right? Like,
100%. Yep.
yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. Well, listen, I know we're coming up on close on time, and I want to, like, it sounds like, so kind of what we do is we'll wrap up like some key takeaways, and to kind of wrap up, right? Obviously, like one of that being, always willing to experiment and try new things is obviously a key takeaway here. But going back to like your particular story, right? As far as the data infrastructure piece, the parent-child issues, right? A lot of it has to stem from, bringing the right, it's a balance, right, of having too many cooks in the kitchen, but also bring the right people, right, to have that insight and that cross-functional relationship to make sure that they're brought in early and to kind of avoid those same mistakes. But I guess, like, as far as like any additional takeaways to kind of leave with the audience so that they could avoid those same mistakes, Aaron.
Sometimes you got to go back to the basics. And
Mm.
there's no such thing as that stupid question, right? Like, the definition
Yeah.
of a customer is something which you would think is a stupid question,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I did 6 months ago. I was like, it's someone who pays the bill. Don't worry about it. But the reality of it is like sometimes you just need to ask, right? And
Yeah.
it helps if you're the new guy on the block, which I was. But sometimes if you've been there for a year, sometimes it's good to just kind of go back to the basics, understand what that is, and move forwards thereafter. And maybe you need to redefine something, and that's okay, right? It's okay to make a change and a difference, because I keep doing this thing right now where I'm like, at the end of the day, this is all ones and zeros. Like, this doesn't really matter. Like,
So true.
we gotta, like, just think about, like, this process is made by someone,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't mean it's perfect. We can change it. And just
Exactly.
like accepting the fact that processes can be changed, that mindsets can be changed, that software can be changed to work the way which we need to, helps massively with moving forwards.
100%. No, I love it. And I guess, like, so obviously a lot of, what you've learned, right, is obviously through experience, but I'm curious as far as like, what are some other places where people look at you found to be helpful? Like, obviously, like you can see behind me, I got some books, that I refer to, and I'm sure this wealth of podcasts and, and courses, but I'm curious as far as where you kind of, pretty much learned what to walk, talk to talk.
Yeah, it's difficult because it's sometimes you just got to do it. I personally make a big effort into building a connection and a network of
Mm.
people like-minded in similar roles to try understanding, like, what are other companies doing around digital customer success. The good thing about digital customer success is that, like, there's no secret formula per se, right?
Sure.
So, like, whilst there is some magic behind it, there's no secret. So we can share a lot of things which we do. And, like, I'm not going to be building a dentist software office anytime soon, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay for us to share notes and be like, this is how we do webinars. This is how we do office hours, right?
Right.
So just getting on those calls with people who maybe you've seen on LinkedIn and you're like, oh, that's a really cool story. I would love to grab 10 minutes of their time if they have it so you can help. Personally, the digital CS community you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast,
Yep.
that's one which I use heavily. You probably see me in there a whole bunch. I'm
For
big
sure.
into
Yeah.
there, trying to like organize things and getting involved. We do roundtables and conversations around tech stack and everything in there. And then there's a few other meetups around, like there's a CS collective, there's a CS meetups, there's like even just Gainsite admin community as well. Like they have their own like community, and then they have a Slack community as well. Just listening to what other people are struggling with problem wise, and understanding like, oh, I wonder if there's a better way to do something like that. And sometimes their ideas have influenced some things we should do because it's completely separate, but the idea of how they're working through the problem has been really useful as well.
That's awesome. No, it's good stuff. We'll definitely we'll drop the links for both of those in the description for the audience. But I guess like to wrap things up, where can everybody find you? Obviously, the digital CS community for sure. But I'm curious, anybody else so that they want to kind of chat with you and learn some more stuff and hear some more stories.
Yeah, you can search me up on LinkedIn, just Aaron Hatton. That's me. And then, yeah, digital community. I'm actually probably on there and active a little bit more than I would like to admit. So feel free to join and send me a message and say hi. Happy to grab a coffee with anyone who wants to do it so we can have a chat. And I don't mind sharing as long as you share, right? Like it needs to be a give and take. So if you have anything you want to learn or ask a question about, like you got to tell me a story at the same time.
Yep.
We can both learn. We can both grow.
It's good stuff. No, it's definitely, we're all in this together. You know, everyone, it's like everyone says, like no one knows what they're actually doing. They're just in it, trying new things and seeing what works. So
it's too true. It really is too true.
Well, good stuff. Well, thanks so much, Aaron, for coming on the show. Really enjoyed the conversation, but we'll keep in touch. We'll connect soon. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you got some value from this conversation, hit subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share it with someone who's also out there trying to build a better customer success or go-to-market strategy, even if it's messy along the way. And if you want more frameworks, tools, automated playbooks, check out jodastechtouch.com and subscribe to our newsletter. That link is in the description. Thanks so much for being here. Keep building, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one. Quick note before we wrap, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The ideas and opinions shared here are of my own or those of my guests and don't reflect the views of any current or former employers, clients, or partners. We might reference tools, platforms, or companies, but nothing shared here should be taken as fact, endorsement, or criticism. Do your own research and always consult your team or legal counsel when making any business decisions. This content is not legal, financial, or business advice. It's just us sharing what's worked, what hasn't, and how we've learned from both. So thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.